It was the dawn of the third age of podcasting, 30 years after the series had launched.
The Babylon Podcast was a dream given form. Its goal, to discuss the place where humans and aliens could work out their differences peacefully.
It's a port of call, home away from home for established fans, newbies, John, Blaine, and guests.
Humans and aliens wrapped in 2,500,000 tons of spinning metal, all alone in the night.
It can be a dangerous place.
Wait, what?
But it's our last, best hope for peace.
This is the story of the last of the Babylon stations.
The year is 2024.
The name of the podcast is
Babylon 5, 30 years later. Hello, and welcome to the latest episode of Babylon 5, 30 years later. The podcast where we go and look at episodes and direct-to-TV movies and such for Babylon 5, usually 30 years after the date of release. We would be myself, Blaine Dowler, and my co-host, John Wilson. How you doing, John?
I am doing very well. I'm not sure whether saving your life is something that I do reluctantly because all life is sacred, or letting you die is something I do because I hate your guts. But I'll figure it out by the end of the episode, I'm sure.
Okay, and I am glad that we are podcasting from two completely different countries.
But it's convictions time, y'all.
Oh, very much so. So, Convictions originally aired on November 13th, 1995.
You know, before we get into it, one little thing that I meant to say last week with the schedule change, and I forgot, because I have been watching all of the Star Treks along with this, is that Babylon 5 and Voyager are now on the same date of release. Now, I know in syndication, the networks had some leeway in when they could show the programs, and so it might have already been like a thing in some stations, but now it's like that first day of allowed broadcast for Voyager and for Babylon 5 is the same date. So you're probably, I'm guessing, more likely to have had schedule conflicts, and now you're going to have to choose which program you're going to watch.
So we are in an episode directed by Straczynski's favorite director, Michael Mike Lawrence Vijar, or Vijar, V-E-J-A-R.
Vijar, yeah.
All right. So this starts off kind of a typical day in the life thing, and things are fairly normal until Ivanova lets Garibaldi know that they've had some anonymous warnings come into CNC saying chaos is coming, may or may not be cranks. It soon becomes clear that they're not cranks when there's an explosion down below, which the viewers know was triggered when some kind of scavenger got into a crate and said, hey, check this thing out, let's see what it is. After the break, that's being investigated. Garibaldi has not yet seen evidence that it was set, because things can go off, but he's absolutely not ruling it out given everything that they've been experiencing lately. When there's another explosion, this time actually very next to one of the ship docks, or very close to it, Delenn makes it out okay. Delenn and Londo were both leaving the ship. When the explosions hit, Lennier jumped in, made sure they got out safely, but he ended up seriously injured in the process shortly after saving Londo's life, which is a new experience for Londo. There's a brief scene guest starring John C. Flynn. Before that, credited as Annoying Man, not a huge part of the plot, but very comical. As things develop, Londo spends most of his time at Lennier's bedside in the med lab because, again, this is a new experience. He hasn't had anyone save his life. He's heard that talking to people in comas can sometimes help them heal. In hopes that that is the case, he will talk to Lennier because he's good at talking. Meanwhile, members of the station are stopping other bombs, and they're investigating, and they're trying to find a pattern. And the only pattern they found is these bombs keep going off in heavily populated areas. They restrict random group sizes. They are doing more scans. They've managed to find some bombs before they go off, or shortly before they go off, so they still explode, but at the point where they're able to save the lives and, some minor injuries, nothing major. While all this is going on, Ivanova also interviews Brother Theo and a group of monks who are coming on board to learn about religion. So with what the viewers know was Kosh, appearing in the season 2 finale. Now the devoutly religious from all across the galaxy are coming to Babylon 5, poking Zach Allen to share his blessing and whatnot. The monks are coming to learn all the names of God. As a central hub, they're willing to pay their keep. So when these bombings are happening, they figure, well, if we check the videos around every bombing site, and that's a tremendous amount of video, we might see the bomber as he's sticking around to watch the results of his handiwork. And these monks are tasked with finding him, which they do rather quickly. Turns out, it looks like this guy has been planting bombs at other places along the way. He has been working on Babylon 5 in a way that gives him access to almost all of it. When Sheridan and Garibaldi's team go down to confront him, he demands that Sheridan see him one-on-one, which Sheridan agrees to, even though Garibaldi would have preferred not even to have the guy know Sheridan was there at all. And ultimately, while Sheridan's having that conversation with him, we find out that he's had a lot of what some people call bad luck. May not be entirely luck, right? It sounds like it's someone who's not taking responsibility for his own choices and actions to some degree as well, but he's taking it out on everybody. So Sheridan goes in there with a concealed link. When the link goes off, the guy sets off his dead man switch to try and detonate the big bomb. It does detonate, but Garibaldi twigged to a specific turn of phrase, figured out the bomb was probably near the fusion reactor, and they had just barely gotten it a safe distance away from the station when it blew. As far as the command staff knows at this time, it's over and done, nothing major. They thought they'd gotten all the victims. The audience knows that during all of this, G'Kar and Londo are trapped together in a transport tube. And rather than working together to escape, as you would find in so many other situations and so many other TV shows of this type, G'Kar is perfectly willing to just sit back and watch Londo die, even at the expense of his own life, because Londo's death means more than his own life. They are rescued in the closing seconds, but it's just a neat little twist. So, have I missed anything that stuck out at you?
No, just we didn't really mention Morishi, who I don't know if he's going to be a new recurring or if he's just in this episode, but he is a character who got a lot of use as an assistant to Garibaldi.
Yes, and I don't recall him coming back again, and I think I would, given that he's played by, I'm probably going to mispronounce this, so John, I don't know, you would do a much better job.
The first name is hyphenated, so I think Kerry is just an English name. Kerry Hiroyuki Tagawa. He's a very familiar face.
Yeah, a lot of our generation would know him as Shang Tsung from the 1995 Mortal Kombat movie, but that's far from his only credit. To the point, I think after that, they started bringing him into the games because he was so well known.
Right. He was in the 2001 Planet of the Apes. It's not very well regarded, but he was in that. He was in License to Kill. I never saw Tekken, but he was in Tekken.
Yeah, Memoirs of a Geisha he was in. That's one of his more respected properties, if not more respected roles. I don't remember him clearly in that. I've only seen it once. He was in Elektra as Roshi, Walker Texas Ranger, Stargate SG-1. This actually is his only episode of Babylon 5.
2 episodes of Heroes as the Swordsmith. It's been a long time since I've seen Heroes. That first season was so good. And the last season was so not.
Yeah. Interesting. He was in a season 3 episode of Jake and the Fat Man, but not one of the ones written by Straczynski, by the looks of it.
Okay. Yeah, he is in only 1 episode of Babylon 5, according to MDib.
Yeah.
But another new character is Brother Theo, who I can only assume is going to be around for a while because they introduced him as coming to live on the station. But looking at his episode count, it doesn't look like he's in a whole lot of it.
No, the actor is in 5 episodes. We've actually already seen 2 of them. He was the original actor cast as Drawl in season 1.
Okay.
So the one who signed up for the Great Machine, and then they explained his youthful appearance as what the machine did to help him. But yes, this is his first of 3 appearances as Brother Theo.
Okay, 3 appearances.
Although, again, I'm reading the scripts. I'm into season 5. I don't think his 3rd appearance has to be his last appearance.
I missed part of that. You don't think his third appearance is what?
I don't think his third appearance has to be his last appearance, if I remember the way it ended.
Okay. But yeah, no, that's the episode. A lot of interesting things here. It feels, we've talked before about the difference between episodes that really move a lot forward versus episodes that seem kind of like day in the life. This is a bit more towards the latter, which is not to say there aren't good things happening at all. But after so much, moving and shaking in the lore, just getting into the shape of the season always feels like a bit of a shift. But I'm liking the titles that they've been choosing of late, that instead of being like an oblique description of an event in the storyline, they're more like a theme that applies to several aspects or characters. We had that with Matters of Honor. We've had that a few times in season 2. And convictions, we have several different people in this acting according to their convictions in different ways. And it's interesting.
Yeah, it's definitely a thematic one. So Brother Theo and his people are here, again, solely because of their convictions. The bomber is acting because of his convictions.
The Londo is both saved and left to die because of convictions.
Yeah, it's definitely a big piece. So, right. One part of the recap I should mention, Linear does wake up. So,
yes. Yeah, with the joke that I found rather humorous. The how many Centauri does it take to screw a light bulb? 1, but in the days of the old Republic. I thought that was great. It doesn't even matter what you say after that. It's just like that launch is funny.
Yeah, and that one was actually pulled from the internet. That was quoted so many times. JMS has had multiple people claim that they were the one who actually came up with that version of the joke, but Babylon 5 light bulb jokes were definitely a thing on Usenet. And he said, he looked that one up. That was the most common variation of all the Babylon 5 light bulb jokes. So he found that one in thousands of posts using exactly that verbiage, and not one of them was attributed. So we figured, okay, that's a safe one. That's part of the culture. And it was deliberately put in as a nod to the internet fandom that helped
fun.
Get established and grow.
That's fun, because in those days, internet fandom was still so nascent compared to today that getting acknowledged on screen like that probably tickled a lot of fans.
Yes. Yeah.
So yeah, this bomber guy, I'm thinking back and honestly just a little bit blinking on my memory of what his whole motivation was.
Basically, his life was miserable because of outside forces, and people kept saying it's not personal, layoffs, wife leaving him, stuff like this. So he was just angry and saying, well, it's not personal. So he was lashing out because he felt the universe was beating him up, so he was going to beat up the universe and make other people feel miserable like him.
I liked the line, God save us from loner, quiet men.
Yeah. Yeah, and one of the things JMS said about this, I mean, on the one hand, like we said, it is a day in the life. It doesn't really do a lot to move forward. But had he won the scheduling fight, there would have been a few months between, right? Anything but one episode, or, it was a week after the season premiere, but then it would have been months before that since anyone's seen Babylon 5. So having, Londo going to Sheridan going, clearly it's the Narns, and having G'Kar go to Garibaldi saying, clearly it's the Centauri. Meanwhile, the station are going, well, what about the Free Mars movement? What about these Earth terrorist groups? It was a way to remind people of all the bubbling plot threads in the background and who the players are on the board as part of natural conversation in this setup.
Oh, that's clever. Okay. I can dig that. I did like how they brought in, they did give mention at least to all these other factions. So often the solution to a mystery is guessed or happened upon very easily without other possibilities being, given credence. So that was good. I liked that. There were several storytelling things, just as storytelling techniques, that I enjoyed in this. Of course, the one that sticks out in my brain is one that I was not a fan of as I go to think about things I was going to talk about. Just at the beginning, whenever the Drazi were coming on board and no one could get the name of their deity right.
Yeah.
On the one hand, it's played for laughs, and it's not like it's outside of the realm of behavior for Garibaldi and Alan. Like, both those characters I'd expect to not get the deities right. But like the fact that nobody could give them anything resembling respect for their beliefs was a little bit annoying. But like I said, it's in character.
Yeah, it is in character, but it would have been nice if at least one of them, like, when after, say, Zach Allen got it wrong, if he'd apologized or something. If instead of saying whatever, if they said, "Oh, sorry," of course.
Yeah, because the whatever just diminishes the importance of getting those things correct. It's just respect.
Yeah, that was my issue. And again, you're saying, as you said, it is absolutely in character for those two to mess it up. I would have expected, had it been Lennier there, he could have, talked their scriptures right up there because, Lennier would have researched it. He's that kind of character. Mm-hmm. Just to interact with the other species when they, no later than when the Drazi said, "Oh, it's Droshala," he would have said, "Okay, mental note, I need to understand what Droshala is because that's significant."
Right.
But again, it wasn't Lennier. He was dealing with John C. Flynn. This was the annoying character that they were going to do open casting for. And then people said, no, the first choice didn't pan out for scheduling reasons, and they had to find a second choice. And people were like, well, how about him? And Flynn was, he was asking for the role to the point that when they said, okay, yeah, you can do it. And they did audition other actors too, just to make it totally fair, above board. But no, Flynn just nailed it, and he would just randomly come into JMS's office and rehearse it on the spot with him, just being the annoying guy.
The one that was poking?
No, the one that was talking to Lennier while Lennier was waiting for Delenn.
Oh, that guy. Yes, I'm sorry. I wasn't sure which scene you were talking about. Okay, yes, the one that was trying to make conversation with Lennier, and Lennier obviously did not want to be talking to him. Yes.
Yeah, to the point that Lennier claimed to have a fatal disease and 7 days to live, so then the annoying guy walks away, and Lennier says, "I will do penance later." I bring that up because that was the other thing that annoyed me. After having a couple episodes that make such a big deal under the extreme conditions which are required to make a Minbari lie.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, it didn't occur to me the first viewing, but the second time I'm like, wait a minute. Lennier is lying. This is why he says he'll do penance later. So it is funny. But who's right? To lie, he must save face of another. So unless in his mind he could justify it by saying, this will make this man go away before he bothers Delenn, and somehow help her to save face. I don't know. But
I wonder if it's one of those things that is emphasized a lot more in the presence of others than it is necessarily in the privacy of their own lives. Like, no one in that room knew he was lying and would have been affected by the fact that he was lying instead of telling the truth. And so it wasn't as big a deal to him. I don't know. I'm thinking about Vulcans having no emotions, and everyone knows they do have emotions, but they tell everyone that they don't. They tell everyone they can't lie when they absolutely can lie. So I'm just wondering.
Yeah.
But Lennier also strikes me as the type to not give just verbal credence to his convictions, but to actually, live them in private as well.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's why that one rubbed me a little bit. I mean, yeah, Minbari never lie. Vulcans never lie. The Watcher never interferes, and Superman never kills.
And Superman never kills. Except when they do. One of the things I liked was the both explosion scenes, the one down below and the one at the docking area. I thought it was very effective the way they were filming, and it just happens out of nowhere. The one guy is like, "Oh, what's inside here?" Anything, it's just people scavenging. You don't know what this scavenging is going to do in the episode. Turns out it does nothing. But in the scene, the scavenging feels like the start of a storyline for the episode. And no, it is just a segue to an explosion. And then whenever Delenn gets back from her voyage, she arrives, Lennier greets her. It's hello. We're starting the storyline for Delenn, but no, there's an explosion. And I felt they were both very effective in catching the viewer completely off guard.
Especially in the second one, they didn't make a big deal out of the fact that Londo was there. Right? If his hair was less distinctive, it would have been very easy to miss the fact that Londo was the guy behind Delenn.
Mm-hmm.
Right? He didn't speak until after Lennier saved his life.
Right.
So yeah, that was well done. And some of that, the episode was actually running long. So in the original script, Lennier, it wasn't Londo he saved. He saved a bunch of other people. JMS had toyed with the idea of him saving Londo, but thought, no, having Londo that close to 2 explosions would be too much of a coincidence.
That's exactly what Mindy said when I was telling her about the story. She's like, what's this guy doing to get all these explosions around him?
Yeah. But then because of the way Mike Vihar expanded the explosion sequences in such a fantastic way, they didn't want to cut them because that would sacrifice the integrity of the story. For the other sequences, they had to rewrite that beginning. So they hadn't shot that explosion yet. They had shot others. At this point, this is where the director, Mike Vihar, had a baseball cap made that said, "I've been Vihar'd," to give to producer John Copeland, because Copeland was always irritated that Vihar would come in exactly on budget every single episode. He spent every penny, even if they didn't really need to. So he not only expanded these explosions, but the one that drove Londo into the turbo lift, or into the turbo shaft tube, transport tube. I probably should have expanded more on that in the summary because it's really great. It's like, Londo excuses himself from Linear. He says, "I've got an appointment to go to. I'll be right back." Heads out. He's catching essentially the elevator, opens the door. Shakar's the only one inside. We get a couple close-ups of their faces, and Londo just says, "I'll get the next one." And there's an explosion down the hall. Londo dives in so he doesn't get caught in the flame. The door's shut. That transport tube chamber that they were in, Vihar had them build one on gimbals so that they didn't have to fake and rehearse and try to coordinate lurching in the same direction. They just shook the room they were in so the actors could react to actual motion.
Wow.
And be a lot more coordinated. And on top of that, Vihar was saying, a lot of things that we're used to in CGI are not accurate. Right down to the motion of the Star Furies, Babylon 5 makes a distinct effort to be scientifically accurate. So they realized none of them actually knew what an explosion at the end of a hallway like that would really look like. So they built a spare hallway, built it vertically, built a bomb, and set it off with a camera at the top pointing down, and just filmed it. And they blue screen Londo on top. So sometimes people online were going, "Oh, I could see that it was CGI. It was cheap. They didn't like it." No, it wasn't CGI. They built that, and they blew up a bomb to make sure it looks right. If it doesn't fit your expectations, that's because your expectations have been twisted by the unrealistic explosions we've seen time and time and time and time again. So.
When you mentioned filming it vertically, it reminds me of whenever I heard a behind the scenes, whenever they blow up starships on Star Trek, in order to get the stuff radiating outwards, like in space, they always put the camera below the explosion so that stuff, as it's coming down towards the camera, will radiate outwards. And from the perspective of the camera, it looks like a sphere of radiation. And you just slow it down a little bit to make it, dissipate more slowly. So yeah, I like clever camera stuff that's done practically and real, so that you can, like you said, you don't necessarily know what something is supposed to look like. So you just do it, and then and it looks, and it's on camera.
Mm-hmm.
So Londo's a person in this show. Mm-hmm. And this episode really captures how people feel about him right now. And it's so different than where we started with this character. That in the beginning, he was a little annoying, but also kind of lovable in his annoyingness. Because that's just how he is. You can, love him or hate him. That's Londo.
He felt like the plucky comic relief.
Right. Here you have two people. One saves his life and doesn't regret it, but also wishes that his convictions had not led him to do it. And then the other who, given the choice of saving his own life, in addition to Londo's, chooses to let both Londo and himself die. And that's where we are with Londo. No one wants him to exist because he's a warmongering, genocidal, I was going to say lunatic, but that's not true. He's not crazy. He's just whatever he is.
Yeah, at least obsessed with priorities that are... Honestly, this is getting down to the difference between nationalism and patriotism, and we usually don't get into real-world politics much on this show, other than to say, oh, look, these are the historical events that we're drawing from. We don't get into current events. But I have seen in at least a lot of the English-speaking world that I can see through news, there seem to be people mistaking nationalism for patriotism.
Mm-hmm.
And patriotism can be very healthy. Nationalism, where you're saying, to heck with everybody else, screw them, as long as we're going okay, we now are a global community, and with some of the issues we need to deal with, it requires global coordinated efforts. So this is a bad time for nationalism. And that's where Londo is. He sees himself as a patriot when in fact he is a nationalist.
Yeah. Patriotism is, to put it in simple words, patriotism is pride in your country, and nationalism is down with other countries for the sake of your country. And it's, yeah.
Yeah, the way I view it is always the difference in the mindset is, I'm proud of my country because of the choices we have made. That's patriotism. Well, nationalism is the choices my country has made are the right ones because my country made them.
Right.
And it's confusing the cause and effect, and your subconscious is saying, no, that's justified. It's a form of tribalism.
Yes. And jingoism and all that other stuff.
Yes.
But yeah, the two sides of Londo and the people's reaction to him, and that's sort of the crux of this. But it's not the only thing going on, because we've got these new characters, these monks coming onto the station. And I found it interesting that they interacted with the only other character whom we have seen any sort of Earth religion attachments for, Susan Ivanova. And they're coming on for ostensibly religious reasons. And I found it interesting that not once in their conversation does her religion come up, and not once does the question of the validity of their beliefs get raised. For Ivanova, it's all logistical stuff and make sure you're not annoying the other residents. And that's the end of it. Once those concerns are satisfied, there's not much she can do. She seems to be personally annoyed, but that's more subtext and portrayal than text.
That is true. And that's another sign. I like the fact that they weren't questioning the validity is a case of respecting the beliefs, right? The complete opposite of what we saw from Garibaldi and Zach Allen when the Drazi came on board. Right. She did not question what they were believing. They were just saying, okay, those are your beliefs. I understand from your perspective. That's what's going on. It's like a good Hitchcock movie, I Confess, where a priest is struggling because someone came into the confessional and admitted to murder, and the priest knows what's coming out in the press, that the police have arrested the wrong man, and it looks like he's going to be found guilty. So then what does the priest do? Oh. So it's a good moral conundrum. Hitchcock said that the atheists didn't get it. They didn't understand why the priest wouldn't just come forward. As an atheist, I understand why the priest wouldn't come forward. I think Hitchcock's issue was that the atheists he was speaking to were the ones that lacked the ability to put themselves in another perspective.
Oh.
Right.
Right. It's not because of their atheism. It's because they're people having trouble understanding different perspectives.
Yeah. I think that's a much bigger issue in a lot of places. So, and that's kind of what's happening here. So people are respecting the others and trying to see things from the other side. And if you can't do that, that's the problem. I used to work with someone who said, every time we got in arguments, well, look at this from my perspective. And then if we didn't get agreement with that, well, we weren't listening to him. So it's like, you do understand that more than one perspective matters. And he would say, well, of course I understand that. It's like, well, you're not hearing anybody else's perspective, so you're not acting like you know that. But anyway, we're just tangenting a little much today.
Right. But Brother Theo is another example of another set of convictions. He's coming out of the station to pursue their understanding of God through other aliens, which is great in the context of JMS's general approach to religious belief in this show. That it's, unlike other utopias, religion did not become a melting pot. Religion still has all of its different cultural differences and varieties and flavors. And you have that in this. We don't actually get a name for their belief movement. They just happen to resemble Catholicism in some ways.
Yeah, they never name it. JMS did have a specific group in mind, which I can look up.
While you're looking that up, I did feel that they were a little bit convenient to the episode to be introduced and be the resolution of the episode, or, one of the steps towards resolution in the same episode. And although they're not gone after this, they're not really used that much either. So I don't know. That was one storytelling choice that I thought was a little bit off.
They are the Benedictine monks.
Okay, so that's a real thing.
So, and that's their current actual real life mission, is to understand it. The only thing JMS added was looking at other planets instead of just other countries and other faiths. But in terms of the comedians, I agree. Right. I think it would have cost a little bit more because there would have been one more guest star fee. It would have been nice if they'd been introduced, right? If that scene that Ivanova had them with had been in a prior episode. And then she can come back and go, I know just the people, and gone back to the people that we met 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago. So there's at least some distance there. The problem I had thinking about that is, well, how do we do that? Because, right, their actions were inspired by the season 2 finale. The season 1 premiere, where would you fit it? Right? Where could you take the time to do that scene after that? Because it has to be after the season 2 finale. Then we have the season 3 premiere, and then we're at this. So unless you push the entire Bomber storyline to a later episode and just have that scene here. Yeah.
Right. Because the only strictures here are the structure of how he wants to tell the story. And there's lots of movement available in that. We always hear about people moving storylines and concepts from one episode to another because it works better here, it works better there. So that's definitely something that was doable. But like I said, it's not a big deal. It's just one of those things that, I think it would have been, with so many things feeling organic and developed over time in this show, that is something I felt like would have been more organic had it been spaced out a bit, like you said.
Yeah, it's just the actual mechanics of spacing that are really hard to do in this case, just because of where it falls.
I feel like there's something else I was going to say about Londo, and I thought I had while all that was happening, but I cannot remember what it was. We didn't see a lot of Delenn in this, except for her concern for Lennier, which was very touching. And I liked in the meeting, whenever they were talking about the injured, they included him by name, because he is somebody that all of the command staff would have had some level of interactions with, because he's the aide to one of the main ambassadors. We haven't seen a lot of interactions between, say, Lennier and Garibaldi. We've seen some.
They built a motorcycle together.
But that's been like a year and a half ago now. One thing I was going to say is that the bomber came to the station in January of 2160. So, or is it 21 or 22?
22.
Century. 2260. So he came on since the premiere. He's only been on the station for basically 5 minutes when all of this is going down, which I feel like that's the sort of information that would have been interesting to the investigators, but wasn't actually said in the script. As far as, the date was said, but the noting that it's worthwhile information was not said.
And again, I don't know. See, to me, part of the issue with the bomber is that it was so random and it wasn't that clear. So the more time you devote to the actual investigation, the more of a letdown that reveal is going to be when you find out that, it's just going to be that hard to catch. So when Brother Theo and the rest grab him, let me do it quickly. We identify him.
They did say that he was probably standing around watching, and we did have camera shots of him standing around watching. So that was good. I also liked when Sheridan was giving his instructions about how they're going to, handle their safety over the next few days while they're doing the investigation. Instead of him just rattling off a few sentences in the meeting room, we go to a montage where he basically narrates and we see things that they're doing to increase their safety. That was a nice visual choice.
Yeah, and I think we could thank Vihar for that. I think the script just had it as a speech. And then Mike Vihar said, no, this is better.
Yeah. Makes it feel real.
Yeah, when Jana starts pointing out, these are the things he's doing that's adding to the script, and have the script there, it's like, no, yeah, I completely understand why Straczynski loves this guy as a director so much.
Mm-hmm.
Mike Copeland is irritated that he actually spends all the money that's there to be spent.
You said I could spend it. I spent it.
Yeah, because Babylon 5, they actually set a previously unseen precedent. I forget which season it was, but one of the years, at the end of the season, they wrote Warner Brothers $1 million check because they didn't need all the money that they were budgeted. So they, at the end of the year, they said, okay, we're done. Here's $1 million back. We didn't need it. So then Warner Brothers started sending people to the set going, how are you doing this? When they said, well, first of all, you have the scripts ready at least this many weeks in advance. Warner Brothers basically said, yeah, no one else is going to do that. Bye.
Because TV is such a get everything done last minute, because the last minute is the only minute you have kind of thing.
Yeah, the only other show I know of that was able to successfully negotiate to have lead time, it was a show created and run by Vince Gilligan, who started with the X-Files, who managed to get agreement from the network to have all scripts for the entire season ready in advance before they start filming, when they were doing Breaking Bad.
Oh.
Which is generally very well regarded.
Yep.
I heard this conversation on a Nerdist Writers Panel podcast, and one of the guys who's working on another show went, wait, you got what? Oh, screw you, man. If I had that lead time, I could write Breaking Bad. You're not so great.
But I think I'm running out of things to say. There was just a lot of good stuff in this episode. It's not one of the higher rated ones of the season on MDib, but I thought they did a lot of good things.
Yeah, I think in a show this serialized, the fact that it is kind of a day in the life and it's not a huge part of the big picture means some people are not going to give it a top rating. They're going to penalize it for not having that serialized element. But that's it. I mean, when we're talking about the two issues we have, both of which are over and done with maybe 5 minutes after the opening credits, when you've got Garibaldi and Zach not respecting the Drazi, and when you've got Lanier telling his little white lie to make the annoying man go away. I mean, those are my only criticisms, and they're not major, because even though Lanier lied, it was a hilarious lie, especially when he follows it up by saying, I will do penance for that later.
And then he gets caught in an explosion, so maybe not so much later.
Yeah. So, in that case, then what is your last best hope, or your standout character or character moment?
So, I thought about this. There aren't a whole lot of individual character moments. I could say, Lanier's conviction in saving Londo. I could say Londo himself, because he does go through both sides of the life perspective thing, which is hard for him. But I think what I'm going to give this to, because I think the thing I want to remember the most from this episode is something we haven't even talked about yet, because I didn't want to talk about it till now. But this is what I was going to say about Londo earlier. I'll bring it in now. At the beginning of this show, G'Kar and Londo had an animosity that sometimes felt jokey because Londo blew it off so much. And G'Kar couldn't really do anything about it. He was just sort of pumping his fist in the air saying, get off my lawn. And Londo at that time was a general representation of past crimes against his people, against G'Kar's people. But since then, Londo has become a personal, direct representation of crimes committed against the Narn, because he himself has been the one in charge of committing them. And so the face of the Centauri on the show to G'Kar has shifted from, I don't like Centauri and Londo's a Centauri, to I hate Londo because he is killing my people. And so that shift has happened. And whenever we get to the elevator where they're both trapped, G'Kar is gleeful at the idea that all he has to do is nothing and they will both die. And the fact that he will die in the process doesn't bother him one whit, because the man responsible for committing war and attempted genocide against the Narns is going to die at the same time. And I don't think that is a moment that would have happened in season 1. I think in season 1, if they had been trapped in that space together, they would have irritated each other and maybe worked together to get out. There is no way G'Kar is going to work with him to save him now. And I think that shift is a really important thing in the G'Kar Londo relationship. And so, yes, I'm going to give it to G'Kar here for just really driving home where we've gotten with those characters and races.
Okay. I have 2 things to say for that. First off, my last best hope is a microcosm of what you just talked about. It's the exchange of looks when the transport tube door opens and G'Kar and Londo realize they might have to ride together. And just the subtlety in the way they play it. You can see the seething hatred on G'Kar's face. And you can see guilt on Peter Jurassic's face as he's playing Londo. Before he says, never mind, I'll wait for the next one, and they can't. There's just that beautiful exchange, and it's just shot 2 close-ups, and those actors can tell the entire story of their relationship up to that point. This could be your first episode of Babylon 5, and those looks tell you everything you need to know when you combine it with their speeches before. But the first time they share the screen, you know that these guys hate each other. So you see that set up. The second thing I want to do, I usually don't read directly from the GMS books a lot, but this one I'm going to read about a page. As written, the scene has an appealing perversity about it, but G'Kar's attitude is fairly straightforward and zen-like. He's committed to his path, quietly content and happy about the whole thing. That was as far as I'd taken it. The day we shot this scene, I was coming through Stage A en route back to my office from Craft Services, the table on which snacks were set out for the crew to munch on during shooting, with a bit of writer fuel, a double chocolate frosted donut, no sprinkles. I'm not a sprinkle kind of guy. I find the whole concept vaguely suspicious. When I heard laughter. Not just a little laughter, which I'd grown accustomed to hearing around the B5 sets. Peals of laughter that roared from one end of the stage to the other. What the hell, I thought, and made my way onto the Zocalo set, where we had erected the stunt transport tube because there wasn't room anywhere else. When I appeared, Mike Vihar, Peter, Andreas, and the crew looked at me with the kind of guilt you'd expect from a kid caught cutting classes to smoke behind the gym. They just kind of froze and looked sheepish. Mike cleared his throat. Hey, Joe, he said. We were just... Andreas had this idea that he should play the part just laughing his ass off, and we were going to tell you it was just... Let me see, I said. Mike called for take 2. By the time we finished take 2, tears were streaming down my face because I was fighting so hard not to laugh since it would ruin the take. And I wasn't the only one. The crew was in a state of complete hysteria. It was one of the funniest things I'd ever seen. Mike looked at me with an expression of, I found a puppy, see? Can I keep it? And, yeah, and that's the take that they used. So, and then after that, he continues because it was actually when they were writing the preamble for this book that he learned that Andreas passed. So, and he basically says that he will write words about it, but he just was not ready to. The words were not coming.
Right, right. Yeah. I feel like so much of the crux of this show is these 2 men. And yeah, this was an excellent phase in that storyline.
I've said many times, if either Londo or G'Kar had been cast with another actor, there's no guarantee you would have had this chemistry. And given how tight the ratings were before that renewal at the end of season 1, I don't know if this would have had a season 2 if we didn't have this combination. They are both great actors independently, but when you put them in the room together, they know exactly how to give each other what they need to draw the best performances out of both of them, and it's just incredible. They may actually be my favorite TV pairing, period. So, yeah, they are just absolutely magnificent together, and the range. We've already talked about how their relationship has changed thus far. Mm-hmm. And keep in mind, we are less than halfway through the series.
Right, right.
So
I have some guesses on where things might go, but of course I don't know because I haven't seen it. All right. So yeah, really good stuff with this episode.
Okay. So, and following the lost best hope, it's time to give form to the dream and point out things that will matter later. And I think this is one that doesn't have a lot that's new. We already kind of spoiled it talking about the cast, but we haven't seen the last of Brother Theo and his monks. Aside from that, what we have seen, right, it's a predictable progression. We've talked about how the Londo-Shikar relationship has changed up to this point. It's on a moving trajectory. So who knows where it's going to go, but I don't think anything else is going to come as a surprise to the viewer that it's going to matter. This is mostly day in the life. So just saying that we're not done with Brother Theo, I think that covers the main bits.
Okay. Yeah, when I was watching it, I didn't really like we said earlier, it's not really a lore episode, so they're not adding mysteries. They're not doing a lot of world building for elements that will come into play later. The Drazi still exist. I feel like whenever they were introduced, I got the impression they were going to become a bigger thing later. They still seem to be kind of a minor thing, just one of the races that exists in the show. But yeah.
All right. So in that case, why don't we wrap up and let people know how they can get a hold of us. Hopefully by now it's habit for some of you. I say that because we are actually recording this 2 days after our first 2 episodes actually went live.
Yes. So everyone is listening to our coverage of The Gathering, and we're getting into season 1, which, wow, thinking back to season 1, I think I'm going to do a rewatch of season 1 as I listen to our episodes and just see where I was as a viewer and where the show was as a thing, and start to get some of that, oh yeah, this was introduced then. Oh yeah, this was teased. Stuff that all you experts get whenever you watch this show.
Yeah. I'm even hearing some, because when we're getting into it, I actually made a mistake in our discussion of The Gathering when I mentioned, at that point I thought that it was artificial gravity and command and control, but no, the center of that is the docking port. So command and control is about a third of the way around Babylon 5. It's spun for gravity like the rest, which is something I should have noticed. It's obvious to the viewers now, since we heard Sheridan on the White Star going, oh, hey, you have artificial gravity? Wow. So it's not something he's used to.
Right.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see what's coming up along the way. And yeah.
But yeah, feedback.
Right, yes. So please send in your feedback. If you catch mistakes like that, which I've made, please send them in. So most of them we will have caught by the time they come in, I hope, and we'll talk about them like this. But if not, we do want to have an accurate record. So if you hear anything else like, oh, there's artificial gravity when there's not, please write that in too. But yeah, any feedback is welcome. You can send it to Babylon5 30 years later at gmail.com using either letters or numerals for that.
You can comment on the episode postings on our websites, the first of which is johnreadscomics.com, the home of all my podcasts. And every week there's a posting there for the episode. Just leave a comment there.
You can also leave comments at bureau42.com, where you can find all of my podcasts as well as those from a couple of other people.
You can go to the podcatcher of your liking and leave a review for the show. Always appreciated. We do search Apple Podcasts as a matter of course. So if you leave a review on another podcatcher, do just let us know if you would like us to read it and acknowledge it on the air.
And finally, you can leave posts on our YouTube channel. So if you are following the show that way, please like and subscribe, of course, so you get the notifications. But yeah, if you let us know, or those comments I should be checking on a regular basis. And again, they'll be used in the show if there are spoilers beyond what we've covered. And so if our first feedback episode is after episode 8, and by then we've got emails saying, hey, this cool thing happens in season 5, episode 3, well, that feedback will be tabled to season 5, episode 3. But we do intend to read it all unless you ask us otherwise, or unless it's just a message about some Nigerian prince trying to sell stuff or something like that.
You know, I met him. He was a nice guy. I was like, why are you always trying to scam people? He's like, I don't know. Just kidding. All right. Yes. So we're in our contiguous block of episodes for just a little while longer.
Yeah, we have 2 more episodes left in this block. So we'll follow up 1 week from today with A Day in the Strife.
After using the phrase day in the life like 10 times in this episode, we get a day in the strife.
Yes. So that one is directed by David J. Eagle. We've got an interesting director the week after that, and then we go to our next feedback episode.
Good.
All right, so please join us for that, and thank you for listening.
And good eating to you.